one of the things I'm learning is that when there's adventure all around you and places to explore that are right next to you, you don't have to sail around the world.
Yeah.
Live out your dreams, chase your dreams, come up with dreams, spend time coming up with dreams, and then get out there and chase them.
Welcome to the Passages from the Heart podcast, a podcast made by an everyday sailor for everyday sailors. We talk everything from day sailing to racing to cruising to camping out on your boat and everything in between. It's time now to raise the sails. Welcome back to the Passages from the Heart podcast, Episode 3, Sailing the Nomadic Life with Paul Trammell. Get ready to voyage from the remote south coast fjords of Newfoundland to the steamy jungle of Panama and adventures in between. I chat with author, sailor, podcaster, artist, surfer, and adventurer Paul Trammell as he shares inspiring stories of chasing dreams and how he came to find peace living aboard Windflower, his beautiful 1972 Cartwright 40. You might know Paul from his popular podcasts, Offshore Sailing and Cruising and Dream Chasers and Eccentrics. Or you may also know Paul as the author of several books of both nonfiction and fiction, some titles including Becoming a Sailor, a Singlehand Sailing Adventure, Alcoholics Not Anonymous, a Modern Way to Quit Drinking, and his most recent novel, a thriller titled Until They Bury Me. Before Paul started chasing dreams aboard Windflower, he shares insight from his life as a high school teacher, a musician, a carpenter, and how that path culminated in a profound realization that he wanted to quit both drinking and drugs. With sobriety and sailing, Paul has discovered a fulfilling life through chasing his dreams to find adventure. Paul also urges us to chase our own dreams, and that finding adventure doesn't have to be going someplace far away.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm over the moon excited to have you on the show. Yeah.
Help me out. Is your name pronounced Shell?
Yeah. So my name is technically my given name is Michelle, and I kind of got the nickname Shell from a coworker about 20 some years ago, and it kind of stuck. So I use that.
Great.
Yeah. So whereabouts are you now? I listen to your podcast regularly, and I think trying to remember somewhere in Panama, right?
I am. I'm in Bocas del Toro, Panama, at the Red Frog anchorage off the island of Bastimentos right now.
And you had, I think, a friend recently that was visiting, if I remember correctly, Lindsay, maybe?
Yeah, Lindsay's here. Yeah,
awesome.
She's here on the boat. Yep.
Awesome. Did you guys have plans to go to, was it the San Blas Islands? Or
San Blas, yeah.
Yeah.
We did.
How did
but we abandoned that plan. We abandoned it due to weather. And we ended up coming back. We were in Portobello, which is about 100 miles, 150 miles east of here. The wind and the conditions just weren't right for going to San Blas. I mean, it would have been extremely uncomfortable. We came back here to Bocas del Toro instead, which is a wonderful place.
Yeah.
And we visited Cusapin on the way here, which is an Indian, Native American community, which is a really fantastic experience. It's like traveling back in time.
I love that about what you do. I have an anthropology background, and part of what always interests me too in your podcasting is when you talk about your experiences and interactions with the people that you meet when you travel to different areas. So yeah, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, if you open yourself up to it, you meet a whole lot of very interesting people while sailing. Not only other sailors, but the locals. It's a different everywhere you go is different cultures. And Panama's blown my mind. I had no idea. I didn't really know anything about Panama until I came here for the first time 2 years ago. And now I'm learning much more about it this time because I'm moving around a bit more. But most of the Caribbean coast is undeveloped, no roads, no access by roads, and inhabited by Native Americans who still live in old-fashioned ways.
So no cell phones and things. Have you seen people with that sort of technology in the places you've traveled?
Yeah, like certainly. Like I spent the month of October and part of November at an island called Escudo de Veraguas, and it's
Mm.
about a 2 mile long island, about 15 or 20 miles offshore. And there's some Indians that live there, the Niabe Bugles, and there's no cell reception out there. There's no electricity. There's no services whatsoever. They live in little houses they built out of the local material, thatch roofs and bamboo, and some of them have wood, plank wood.
Hmm.
They paddle in dugout canoes. Some of them have motors, and they fish and take their fish back to the mainland to sell. But very primitive living. Yeah, and you don't need much. It's Panama. There's no hurricanes. The temperature is always in the 80s. It might drop. It drops into the 70s in the winter, but you don't need a whole lot. And there's oddly enough, in a lot of the places I go, there's not bug problems either. So
I'm
you know,
surprised to hear that. I would think that it
yeah,
would be that there would be. You
there's
know,
certainly in some places, but I haven't experienced. I mean, living on the boat, I'm not on land at nights, so that's
oh,
part of it for
true.
sure.
Yeah, yeah,
But they
for
don't have
sure.
windows. They don't have screens or windows in any of the houses here. It's only
Yeah.
the more wealthy, people that have modern houses. Most of the houses, and even in the villages and the communities you see around here, uh, don't have anything in the windows. Just an opening. Yeah, just an opening in
It's
the wall.
That's what I hear, that living in Southern California is like, where you don't need that sort of stuff. I mean, I don't know if it is true or not, but I've heard that. And where I live, it's very humid and extremely buggy, especially because I have horses and other critters on a farm that I manage. So we have
Oh
our
yeah,
fair share of that.
you're in Iowa, is that right?
Yeah, I'm in Iowa. This is where I grew up, but I've lived all over the country. Mostly, I spent the longest period of time in the Pacific Northwest. And, I'm not really sure where our next destination shall be, but I will tell you this: it has to be someplace where I can be on my boat year round. That's for
Oh, okay.
sure. That's
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the reason I kind of got into this podcasting or talking to people is because my boat, I have two, are on the hard, and I go crazy in the wintertime not having my water time and my sailing time. And I thought, this would be a great way to keep the wheel spinning, to keep
Hmm.
learning and growing my skills by learning through others and their experiences. And of course, it's just always, not to mention, entertaining to
Hmm.
hear about other people, how they live the sailing life. And I don't know if I think I told you that I connected with you via when you interviewed Olivia Wyatt, because I follow her. And so
Uh-huh.
I thought, I got to learn more about this person. And so I've been listening, and also started recently listening to your newer podcast as well, the Dream Chasers and Eccentrics, which I'm really
Oh, great.
digging. I
Good.
love both of them. But I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself. One of the things I really want to start out asking you, I always think it's interesting to learn how people come to find having sailing in their life. And so I'd love to hear your story.
Sure. My father was a sailor, and he introduced us to sailing when we were children. My brother and I, my sister, and he didn't have a lot of time though. He was a surgeon, so he was more like he wanted to be a sailor, and he kind of was, but he didn't have the time to do it as much as he'd like to. But he did take us offshore on some trips, and I got to get a little taste of being out in the open ocean, going to the Bahamas or the Keys from Florida when I was young, and that always stuck with me. But I got away from it, and I moved back to Florida after college, and had it in my head that someday I want to get back out on the water. But I chased other dreams at that time. And back in 2015, everything in my life changed because I was a big partier, and I quit drinking and quit partying altogether and just got totally sober and started getting back into adventures. I was looking for, like, I need to be going on big adventures. That's what I've been missing out of my life, and substituting alcohol and drugs for that. And so I was out in the Okefenokee Swamp doing a 5-day canoe trip by myself the Okefenokee Swamp, which is all full of alligators and
Wow.
wildlife. And I had this realization that I really loved being on the water and being nomadic, and it reminded me of something. And what was it that it reminded me of? And oh yeah, it's sailing. that's the big adventure. That's what you got to be doing. You're sober now. You don't have to carry around, 12 beers a day. You can sail, and it just hit me like a light bulb. And I went, when I got home, I started reading books because I'm a book learner. I immediately started tearing up books about it, and then I took a class. I took a 1 week sailing class with the American Sailing Association, and
Mhm.
learned how to sail. I didn't really know how. Um, Learned how to sail and how to navigate and how to, learn the rules of the road and all the basic things you need to know to give it a shot. You can learn
Yeah,
everything in a week. You can learn enough to get started in a week. It takes the rest of your life to
exactly.
learn everything. But and then soon after that, I bought a sailboat. I bought an inexpensive old 30-foot sailboat that was capable of
Wow.
going offshore. And I did a lot of work to it. Yeah, for like $7,000. I bought it at the same price you might buy a used car for. Um, I bought her and sailed. I bought her on the other side of Florida. I was in St. Augustine on the northeast coast, and I bought her in Tampa on the Gulf Coast, and had to get her home. I had to sail her 1,000 miles to get home,
By
and
yourself.
yeah, by myself. I was determined to be a solo sailor, and because I was single at the time, and I wasn't going to let that stop me. I'm fine with solo adventures. I kind of always have been. So I studied and learned all I could, and I practiced sailing in Tampa Bay. Probably a dozen times. I took her out and sailed her around, and went outside the bay once and thought, okay, I can. There's a pretty good chance that I'm going to be able to do this. So I took off and sailed 3 days to the Dry Tortugas. That was my first stop. Which is part of the Florida Keys. Fort Jefferson is there. It's out there all by itself, out in the Gulf. Much further west than Key West, and Fort Jefferson is on it, an old Civil War fort. Uh, and that was, I made it there, and I was so happy that I pulled that off. And then from there, I waited for the right weather and sailed from there to Miami and visited an old friend, and then sailed from Miami to St. Augustine and tied off to a
Wow.
mooring and pulled it off. After that, I thought, well, gosh, I can do it. And I wrote my first sailing book about that. That's called Becoming a Sailor,
Yeah,
and it's just
which I just
snowballed
bought.
ever since then. Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
stoked. I got that and I got three of your other books, and I definitely want to talk books with you too. That's amazing that you did all that, and like you had the confidence. I think as a sailor, for me, my story is very similar to yours. I grew up sailing, although I did go pretty much every weekend, but I got away from it when I got into, college, grad school, career, and actually started taking flying lessons. And then I have a little health thing that I have to deal with that I saw preventing me from achieving my getting my private pilot license. And I was really depressed and bummed about it. And then I remembered, like you said, the light bulb thing. I had the same thing happen. I was like, oh, light bulb. What about getting back into sailing? I love it so much, but I haven't done it for decades. And the next thing you know, here I am. I've got two sailboats. They're both smaller vessels, not like anything you have. And I only inland lake sail. But man, I couldn't be happier. I feel like I'm home.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. So I know in listening to some of your shows, now you have a different boat now, and I believe her name is Windflower. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so how did you go from sailing your Dufour 30-foot sailboat, which is a pretty big boat, by the way, for your first sailboat? I'm impressed because my first was 16 feet, and my other one now is 23. How did you decide that you were ready for something different, something that sounds like bigger, obviously? And how did that, in other words, what you had been doing with your sailing at that point in time? I'm assuming you must have had, what, I want to do more. And so how did that sort of lead into you finding Windflower?
Well, my books were selling, and the biggest I know my big dream was to live on my boat and sail full time, and the big obstacle there is, how are you going to make money off,
Right.
live
Sure.
on the ocean. I was a carpenter, and I didn't really want to try to sail around and find carpentry jobs. That's not realistic. So when my book started selling, I thought, well, there it is. I can be an author. I am an author, and I
Yeah,
can.
for sure.
My books are selling, and I can pull it off. So I sold my house. I said, this is it. I'm doing it. I'm just pulling the trigger 100%, diving into this. I owned a house in Florida. I sold it. I didn't think my boat would sell, my Dufour. It's not a well-known boat, and boats are hard to sell. But I kind of got lucky, and she was also beautiful at the time. She had a new paint job, and she had perfect varnish work, and she was clean, and she looked really sharp. And a guy came down to look at her, and it was, believe it or not, the Dufour Arpege was his dream boat since he was a child. The boat he wanted to have ever since he was a child because of some book he read. He loved it and he bought it. And I thought, well, my goodness, there it goes. Now I got to buy a boat. I got to buy a bigger boat.
Yeah.
And I wanted a bigger boat because I was going to live full time on her. So somebody, just some random guy I talked to had a Pacific Seacraft 40, and he was a single hander. And I said, it's an awfully big boat to single hand, isn't it? And he said, well, he goes, 40 is about as big as you should go. He goes, if you're a single hander and you're getting a bigger boat, like, you probably shouldn't go bigger than 40. So that number kind of stuck in my head. Like, okay, I'm looking for boats now. 40 is as big as I'm going to look at. And the smallest boats I was looking at were 36, maybe.
Okay.
And those are just kind of arbitrary numbers. And this was the biggest boat I looked at, and she was extremely inexpensive because nobody wanted her. She's people old fashioned full keel boats aren't fashionable.
Yeah, I don't understand why, because that's the way I would go. For sure,
yeah,
that's how I would go.
Right. It's just for whatever reason people want. I guess I don't study the market, but Windflower sat on the market for a while, even though she was ready to sail, totally overbuilt and safe, and in my eyes, a really cool boat. She was really inexpensive, and she's big and roomy for one person to live on. Like, yeah, you got plenty of space. I got 5 surfboards on the boat, and I got a dinghy, and I got dive gear and tons of books and just whatever I want. There's room for it, pretty much. A refrigerator, and she's forgiving and safe. She's got a 6-foot draft and a huge full keel, so she cuts through the water. She doesn't bounce around. She's very seaworthy, totally designed for more offshore work than I'm ever going to put her through.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up with her. And but like you said, when I bought her, I couldn't guarantee I was going to even be able to single hand her. I didn't really know. She's so much bigger than a 30-foot boat, but it turns out it's no problem. It's no problem at all.
So remind me again. I'm sorry. The year she is, you said is 72. Is that right? And
yeah,
Cartwright?
Sort of. Yes, Cartwright is correct. And I have one of my surveys that it came with the boat says she was built in 72, and another one says 78. And the story is that she was laid up. Her hull was laid up in 72, but the guy that ordered her didn't end up buying her, and she sat and wasn't commissioned. She never actually got in the water until 78. Call her a 72 or call her a 78. She's whichever one you prefer, I guess. I tend to say 72.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that brand or make of boat. Where is it made?
Buzzards Bay Boatyard in Massachusetts, Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts. It's not a production boat. It's Jerry Cartwright was the designer.
Okay.
And the Buzzards Bay Boatyard built 14 of them.
Mm-hmm.
He designed a few other boats too, but anyway, 14 of these were built. And yeah, nobody knows about Cartwright. It's not a common boat at all. But it's specifically designed for long offshore passages and for single handing.
Okay.
Jerry Cartwright was a single hander, so she's safe and flush deck, full keel, oversized rigging, very large chain plates, dual backstays, small cockpit.
Wow.
You can reach everything from the helm. She was designed with a tiller, so she still has a tiller head, and I have the tiller, but somebody added a wheel, so she's got a wheel now. But single handing is easier with a tiller, so that's probably why Cartwright designed her that way.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you can steer with your legs and you can reach everything, you can move about the cockpit and still have one hand on the tiller, and you can work all the winches, and all my lines lead back to the cockpit. Everything except for my jib halyard. Which I never need to mess with, but every other line leads back to the cockpit.
She's a cutter rig too, right? Or
yes.
No? Okay. Yeah, I was curious about that. So she's cutter rig, and the flush deck. I always thought, man, with the light and stuff, because I always think I love to have light, and like having a flush
Mhm.
deck, I always thought, well, is there much light? But you know, the truth of the matter is that when it comes to offshore passage making, you don't want big windows, right?
That's the truth. Yeah. Yeah, you
So
definitely sacrifice interior light, but you gain some space because you have a bit more space inside with the flush deck.
yeah,
You have a bit less headroom, but there is enough headroom for me not to have to duck. I'm 5'10",
okay,
so I'm okay with that. And what you gain is a deck. It's like you gain a lot of living space on the top of your boat.
yeah,
I do yoga every morning up on my deck. There's plenty of
that's
space.
awesome. Yeah.
The dinghy fits up there. When I'm offshore, my dinghy is on deck, strapped down tight, and I can still walk around the mast, and I can still walk up and deal with the anchors. I can walk on either side of the dinghy. I think
Wow.
it's a great setup. I like the flush deck. Certainly, it's definitely going to be darker inside because of it.
Yeah.
But you can this is the modern world. You can add lights if
Well,
it's
and
too
then the
dark.
other thing is that, like oftentimes, you're out on the probably in the cockpit sailing, or you're exploring on land. And so really, I mean, I don't know how much time you spend inside the boat anyway, but the lifestyle that you lead lends me to believe you probably, with the exploring of the different places you visit, and I know you're big into I think you said surfing, and I think spear fishing. So it sounds like you've
Hmm.
got a lot of things that would keep you outside the boat anyway.
Yeah, I spend a lot of
Although,
time in the cockpit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was going to say though, I'm really interested to hear too about the voyaging you've done with her, and one in particular where you sailed to Newfoundland and being in a
Oh yeah.
cold climate. I'm really curious how did that come about? Like, I know I get the pull to go south and be in the Caribbean where it's warm and the water's blue, and you can see all sorts of I don't know, aquatic life when you're free diving or scuba diving and surfing and all that. But what's the deal with the Newfoundland?
Well,
Where did that come from?
the draw for Newfoundland is uninhabited coastline, and places in the far north have lots of that, and they look really fun to go to when you're in your house, and and you're in a heated room. Uh, but it's uninhabited coastline. So the world has very little uninhabited coastline with anchorages. So the
Right.
Bahamas has some. Bahamas has quite a bit because a lot of the islands are uninhabited. Um, but America has none. Basically, the east coast of America has about zero
Right.
uninhabited coastline. So I was looking for it. I was looking for uninhabited coastline. Like, where am I going to go? And this is pretty much before I even owned a boat. I was looking. I was like, where am I going to go when I get a boat? Um, so I'm looking at the coast of America, and I'm thinking, well, what about Maine? People always rave about sailing to Maine. That sounds like a big.
Yeah.
But you look at Google Earth, and the coast of Maine is inhabited. There's houses and roads everywhere. Even the little islands have houses on them. So I kept on looking further north, and Nova Scotia comes next, and it has some areas that are very sparsely inhabited, and there definitely are some anchorages where you're not going to see houses.
Yeah.
But if you go one step further north to Newfoundland, which I didn't even know what Newfoundland was until I was looking at it on Google Earth. It's a very large island, and the central southern coast of it is completely uninhabited, and there's fjords poking way up into it, and they're uninhabited completely. It's absolute pure wilderness. And uh, even if you were to climb up the mountains that make up the fjords and start hiking north, you're going to go at least 60 or 100 miles before you come to a road or a house
Wow.
or anything.
Yeah.
Like the whole central part of that island is mostly uninhabited. So there's tons of real wilderness there. That's what attracted me. And it was very cold, even in the summer. There was certainly a lot of discomfort and difficult sailing, not just getting there, but getting back from there. Um, yeah, no doubt about it. And Windflower is not the ideal boat because she doesn't have a Dodger. There's no enclosure in my cockpit. Like if it's raining, I have a Bimini, but if it's foggy and wet, you're getting and cold, like you're getting foggy, wet, and cold. So, having a bit of an enclosure would be nice if you're going to do that. A pilot house would be ideal. A boat with a pilot
Yeah.
house, a boat with a diesel heater would be nice.
So you didn't have a
um,
heater when you were
or
up
a wood stove or something. No, I didn't. I had a little
there? Wow.
12-volt heater that was good for warming your hands up, but but it it used 360 watts, so it was it consumed too much power for me to use very often. Certainly couldn't just leave it on unless the motor was running. So yeah, I was pretty undergunned as far as heat, but I pulled it off. I pulled it off, and it was
Yeah.
the biggest adventure of my life, and it was certainly worth doing. The fjords and the hiking and the fishing and the
Wow.
scenery it was unbelievable. It exceeded my expectations in every way. There were
Wow.
waterfalls everywhere you looked. There was hiking, incredible hiking because there's almost no trees in the places I was going. So you go ashore and you're on like tundra and rocks, and you go straight up a mountain, and there's no bugs up top, and there's like a big undulating plateau up top, 1,000 feet up, with lakes and ponds and streams and lots of bare rock, and it's all been scraped by glaciers. And there's mountains all over the place, and there's no civilization. There's not even airplanes flying overhead. Like, you really feel like you're in the wilderness, because you are. It was fantastic, and I wrote a book about it, Sailing to Newfoundland.
Awesome. Yeah, I got that one too.
Oh, good.
I think I got all of your sailing nonfiction so far, which
Good.
I'm thrilled. So I've got lots of good wintertime reading to keep me going through until the next sailing season comes
All
for
right.
me. But now you did that trip by yourself too, right?
Yes.
Where did you depart from where did you leave and from to sail there? And then how long were you there, would you say?
Okay. I left Florida in the middle of May, I think. Yeah, roughly the middle of May or early May,
Mm-hmm.
and sailed 9 days straight to Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kicked around Maine for a couple of weeks, and then departed Maine right at the end of May, and
Okay.
arrived in Nova Scotia, Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, at the beginning of June. And this was early. Like, I didn't really realize it, because May in Florida is summer. Like, there's no two ways about it. Summertime is
Right.
underway in May in
Yeah.
Florida, but it's not in Maine. It's still pretty cold,
Right.
especially on the water.
Right.
So everywhere I went, I was like the first boat there, and people were like, "Oh, you're the first boat here this year." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I didn't realize that, but I sure am." So, same within Lunenburg. I got to Lunenburg, and I was, it's cold. It's cold, but so the season for Newfoundland is July and August. It's a 2 month
Okay.
season. Before July, it's still cold. The water's, water. Here's the deal: water heats up slower than air. That's the bottom
Right.
line. So in the early summer and then far north, the water's still cold from the winter, and you have a ice risk. You have a risk of drifting
Yeah.
about chunks of ice even in June. So you don't want to get there really. You don't want to get to Newfoundland much before July. I arrived in the end of June. I think it was June 23rd or something. I arrived in Newfoundland. It was
Uh-huh.
still pretty cold. Maybe lows in the 40s and highs in the 50s, or and foggy and rainy. But it's, yeah, so dramatic. I pulled into the first fjord, Cape Lahune Bay. You've got 1,000-foot cliffs on both sides of you. The fjord's 4 or 5 miles long. It's got some coves, and I pull into there, and you can't see the tops of the mountains. Like, you see the first 500 feet, and then above that is all cloud and fog. Totally dramatic. And then I pulled into Dead Man's Cove, and it's the same thing. You can't see the tops of the mountains, but you can see the waterfall coming out of the
Yeah.
clouds, rolling down the rock face.
Wow. It
And this
sounds
in this
amazing.
green, yeah, it was like right out of a Tolkien novel or
Yeah,
something.
for sure.
I mean, if trolls and dragons and wizards would have been there, and hobbits, that would not have been out of place. They would have fit
Right.
right in.
Yeah.
In my imagination, they were there. It
Wow.
was
That
that
sounds
dramatic.
wonderful.
So then when the first sunny day came around, it was just absolutely amazing. And you basically, that time of year, you've got about one nice sunny day to two cold, foggy and rainy days. And that's
Yeah.
fine. You don't need more than that, because the sun, it gives it so much contrast and drama when the sun comes out, and it's a beautiful day, and you can see the tops of the mountains for the first
Yeah.
time, and go for a hike. And yeah, it was pretty incredible. So I stayed there through August and left at the beginning of August. And basically, right when I got back to Nova Scotia, a hurricane roared up the coast, I went to the southern end of Nova Scotia and went into Shelburne, which is an anchorage about 12 miles inland. So I was out of the way, and the hurricane missed where I was, but it hit Cape Breton and Newfoundland. It hit one of the villages I visited in Newfoundland right there in September.
I didn't even, I know this, I feel very ignorant saying this, but had no idea that they reached that far north, hurricanes.
Yeah, right. You wouldn't think it, but they do. I mean, maybe they're not hurricane strength by the time they get up there, but they're still either tropical storm or Cat 1. I mean, it's still something you don't want to be in on a boat. You got to get out of there. That's kind of the point I'm making. You got to get out of there before September. Even though it's beautiful, like September, the water's warm and it's the best weather. Like you might want to stay. People say, "Oh, September's gorgeous. September's the best month here." They would say, in Nova Scotia or even in Newfoundland. But as a sailor, you got to get out of there. You need to be heading south at that point. And unfortunately, the prevailing winds are all from the south, so you can't just leave and whenever you want. You have to take your first opportunity and go as far as you can and pull into an anchorage and wait for your next opportunity to move south and keep doing that. And I kept doing that all the way to Annapolis, where I went to the Annapolis Boat Show in October.
Awesome. I've been once.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
So much fun. And then it was the same deal. Keep taking every opportunity to go south until finally I made it back to Florida, just in time for another hurricane. I got back to Florida and I don't know, what was it? Was it still October? It must have been late October when I got back to Florida, maybe early
hurricane
November.
Season. Yeah,
yeah. So we had a Category 1 roll through right when I got there, and I was at a marina in a good spot, so I was fine, but it was nasty weather, and that's the whole ordeal was the Newfoundland trip. Like that's what you go through to go there, and if you want to go to the Azores, which would be your other option, go to Newfoundland and then to the Azores, you can. But I was told to what was I told? I was told to leave no later than early July or something. So if that's the case, you've got 4 weeks in Newfoundland. You've got June. I wanted to stay longer. I wanted to stay through July and August. Yeah, July and August. What was it? No, it was mid-July. I'm sorry, I'm getting my months mixed up. I think I was told make sure you're arriving in the Azores by the beginning of August. So that means leaving by the second or third week of July.
Okay.
And your season just started at the beginning of July. So you've had 2, maybe 3 weeks in Newfoundland, if that's the thing to do. And you're not seeing very much in that much time, So those are basically your 2 options if you want to go. Oh no, you do have a third option. You can leave your boat there over winter. Some people do that. They go to Newfoundland, they spend as much time there as they can, and then they end up in a marina where they haul out and leave their boat there for the winter and come back the next year and then sail either back south or sail to the Azores. So yeah, you've got 3 options with the seasons up there.
Well, it's interesting how, weather and seasonal weather, I guess, if you will, really, dictates the life of a sailor to a large extent, because you want to stay safe. And, that's the one thing for me that I wish that I need to push myself to do things, take some sailing trips in other places from where I am now, because I really don't get any exposure to that sort of learning, if you will. And I guess it's just things you acquire over time and with experience. I mean, you can read books about, where to stay safe and all that sort of thing. And I've been following some folks through the South Pacific, for example, and, Polynesia and Fiji, and trying to figure out, the cyclone season there and how people kind of deal with that. And where you are, as you mentioned, with Panama, not being in that area where a hurricane generally reaches. What is it? It's between, what is it? The equator, 10 degrees up to 10 degrees north and 10 degrees south latitude, right? Is that kind of the belt? Is that they said that's a danger zone area for the Caribbean? I thought there was some sort of like.
No, you're out of it. So down here I'm at 9 degrees.
Okay.
Latitude, and hurricanes don't come this far south.
Okay.
So we're safe down here. I'm not sure if it's 10 degrees you're safe below, but anyway, here in Panama, they don't get hurricanes ever. And it's the same in Trinidad, Tobago. Maybe to the very southern of the Windward Islands, you're safe as well. Maybe St. Lucia and south. So that's basically all I know. The rest of the Atlantic, you're in danger. You're you're pretty safe over on the other side, Ireland and Portugal. Portugal got hit though. A couple of years ago, Portugal got hit by a hurricane for the first time ever. So it's becoming less predictable. That's the general trend. That. Yeah, wow. the general trend in weather is that storms are becoming stronger and less predictable, and hurricane season is expanding in both directions. Right now, as we speak, there's a late season tropical storm raging up the coast, hitting Maine right now. It's already gone, through Florida.
Yeah,
it's
I
right
saw
now
that.
On top of Maine, and and here we are in December 18th. We're 18 days out of hurricane season. November used to not be hurricane season, but it is now. May when I was a kid, was not hurricane season. May and November are hurricane season now. It's expanding.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Yeah,
that's going on. That's climate change. It's happening, and we're living it. So, but we're pretty safe down here right now. We're getting some of the weather too. It's not dangerous here right now, but it's windy.
Well,
and rainy, and that's all part of the same system that's raging up north right now.
Yeah,
influenced by that system.
Yeah, I saw that on. I have the Windy app, and not Windy app. It's windy.com. Because I think there's a Windy app, windy.app and a windy.com. And I downloaded the windy.com, and I also have Predict Wind. And I always like to look to see, what's going on with all that, with the different people I follow and the weather systems that are in that area. But getting back to Panama, I'm really interested in kind of, it seems like you really love it there. And I'm going to just be honest, like some people that I've followed before have had some not as positive things to say about the area. For example, with the canal crossing and the checking in, checking out, and dealing with officials.
That's all true.
Okay. And then the other thing, getting back to this, is it the Sandblast? Am I saying that correctly? Or Sandblast
Yes.
Island group? I was hearing, I thought in that group that there has been some incidents recently of piracy, and that some sailors are saying to not go there. Is that, was I hearing that correctly, or is that incorrect? I just wanted to kind of set the record straight from your perspective, since you're in close to that region.
I have not heard piracy stories from anywhere on the Caribbean side of Panama. There are some islands on the other side called San Perlas.
Yeah,
there were some piracy stories from over there recently.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Some armed robbery and maybe even a death. Certainly something bad happened over there recently.
Yeah.
Over here, I haven't heard any piracy, but breaking and entering, sure. Right here in Bocas del Toro, breaking and entering happens. If you go out at night, you go out to the bars, and someone's scoping you, there is a chance they're going to come on your boat. So if you're like me and you don't drink and you don't go out at night, they're not coming onto my boat. My dinghy's there. They see it. They're not coming. If I leave something in my dinghy, might it get stolen? Sure. Right now, as we speak, I've got a 30-foot steel cable going through my motor and through my gas tank on my dinghy and coming to a big pad eye on my boat, and it's locked. That's the whole Caribbean. I don't worry about that in the Bahamas. I don't worry about that so much in little areas like Cusapine, where it's all American Indians. But the more urban you get anywhere, the more you're going to have thieves. Like in the Bahamas on the small islands, I go to the smaller, less populated places. They don't tolerate thieves. If you're a thief in a small community in the Bahamas, they run you out.
Yeah.
You're gone. You're going to end up in Nassau or Freeport. So Freeport on your boat. Yeah, you lock stuff up. It's urban. People can be anonymous there. A thief can't live in a small town. Everybody knows you're a thief. You steal one thing, everybody knows. You just can't stay. You got to go. You got to go somewhere you can be anonymous. You can be anonymous in a bigger town, in a big city. So certainly there is petty theft here in Panama, and maybe everywhere in Central America. I don't know. So you do have to worry about that a little bit, but I'm willing to put up with things like that because the surf here is fantastic. The spearfishing is great. There's no hurricanes. The scenery is beautiful. The culture is amazingly interesting. You mentioned officials. Yeah. Clearing in here at Bocas del Toro, you're going to pay $140 cash to the guys that come out to your boat and fill out some forms. And if you try to find out if that's legal or not, by going through Panama's website, you're probably not going to see anything about it. and they're not going to. You know, and so yeah, you're paying. We want to call them bribes or propinas or whatever. You're paying extra money. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of options as to where to clear in Panama on this Caribbean coast. I'm told that the most honest place is called Obaldía. It's right on the Colombian border. It's just a military outpost. I've heard if you can clear in there, you're not going to pay any of the extra money. But pretty much anywhere else you are. So yeah, just if you're prepared for it, you expect it, it's not so bad. If you get here and you're not prepared for it, and you're immediately thinking, God, these guys are shaking me down for $140. Like, good grief, it's terrible. You think you're being robbed. But if you show up with the attitude, like, it's going to cost $140, and then it's going to cost $175 for the cruising permit, which is legal. That's 300 and something bucks. And you're good for your boat's good for a year, and your passport is good. Your visa is good for 6 months. You're paying $300 and something for it. Okay, now that's if you're expecting it, that's what it costs. You're expecting it. It's to me, it's not a big deal. Like the Bahamas costs more than that for the Bahamas costs $300 for 3 months.
So where do you get all this information? Like, I've heard about this website called Noonsite that cruisers use. So is that something that you use too, or how can people find out what the situation is? For example, if you are sailing, or
Noonsite's a good one. Yeah, Noonsite is good. You can also find Facebook groups for every place. So Bocas del Toro has a Facebook group, Bocas del Toro Cruisers. Lenton Bay San Blas has a Facebook group. Panama Cruisers. There's at least 3 I can think of off the top of my head. So you can go right onto those and say, ask whatever question you have. Like, where's the best place to clear in? Where's the dinghy dock? How much money is it going to cost? What can I expect? And if you show up knowing what to expect, you're not going to feel like you're getting robbed.
Right.
Because you can't not pay those fees. Like if you just flat out deny and say, no, I'm not paying you, they'll run you off. Like, okay, go somewhere else then. Where are you going to go?
Right. Yeah.
Go to Colombia. So yeah, you just got to pay to be here, whether it's legal or not. I don't know, but once you're in, and it's all good. You go through that 1 day of paying fees. And it's not that big of a deal, and you're here for 6 months. And if you want to stay longer, all you have to do is leave the country for 3 days. You can go to Costa Rica pretty inexpensively.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that a few months ago. I spent a total of about $200 is what it cost me with the hotel and the transportation and everything, and fees to get in and out of the country. Yeah, I lined up a boat and a van and a hotel and a van and a boat ride back, and you're good to go for another 6 months.
Yeah, and it sounds like you really love that region. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is it about that place that always brings you back to that area?
I love it here because, one, it's always warm. It's never cold. It's very stable climate. Lows in the upper 70s, highs in the mid 80s. There's plenty. I don't have a water maker, so it rains often enough that I always have an abundant fresh water. It's raining right now, as a matter of fact. There's very good free diving here, coral reefs. The spearfishing's okay, but the diving is great. There's all kinds of cool stuff to see underwater. There's the interesting culture. If you want to go meet real American Indians who still paddle around in dugout canoes, like, it's very easy. They want to come. They're curious. Like, they can come to the boat and sell you coconuts and bananas and banana bread and empanadas, and they're friendly. Take you on a tour of the jungle for $5. There's really interesting things to see and do here, and it's beautiful. It's jungle. There's monkeys. There's parrots, oropendolas. Wow. There's poison dart frogs. I spent a week in the Rio Chagres where there's crocodiles and howler monkeys, and there's just so much cool stuff to see. If you're into like biology, jungle animals, birds, insects, flowers, whatever, bats. If you're into anthropology or into American Indians, like, this is what America would look like if we didn't run all of our Indians off onto reservations. These are American Indians. They're straight black hair, no facial hair, dark skinned. They're American Indians that still live. I asked quite a few of them when I was in Kusapin recently, how long have your people lived here? And they said I don't know, very long time, as far as forever. And I said, 1,000 years. And they said, yeah, more than that, And I said, one guy
Right.
said 10,000 years. And he said, sure, for as far as I know. Yeah. So that's all really interesting. And then plus, my other favorite place is the Bahamas, but you can't get anything there. Here you can get whatever you need. You've got hardware stores, grocery stores.
Mm.
You can get mail delivered. You can order from Amazon and have it delivered here. I know I've got a
Oh,
battery,
wow.
and I've got a new lithium battery for the boat coming right now. Like
Yeah.
you can get things here. You can work on your boat. You can buy a new motor for your outboard. Like whatever you need, you can get it here in Bocas del Toro, in Panama in general. So
Hmm.
it's a modern country in the interior. Panama City is a modern first world city with an international airport and the and the canal and everything else. But then the edges are American Indians living in the jungle with no roads. It's just such an interesting place. And you've got to go somewhere in hurricane season, and there's
Right.
not a whole lot of places to choose from. So this is a pretty good one.
Well, once we get through hurricane season in that region, I guess, where are you thinking destination wise is someplace you'd like to go?
Um, after sailing to Newfoundland, I don't feel like I have to prove anything anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've kind of gotten that big, like I've got to go on big long journeys to far away exotic places. I've kind of satisfied that, at least for right now. I'm
Yeah. Okay.
happy. I'm happy here in Panama. I would be very happy. I would be very happy just to sail back to the Bahamas, which is pretty far away. You're talking 10 or 11 days sailing to
Oh,
get back to the
okay.
Bahamas from here. So that's a pretty significant passage. Um,
Sure.
I love the Bahamas. I still haven't seen all of the islands, and even one of the things I'm learning is that you don't have to go far away to find adventure when it's all around you.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a free diver and a spear fisherman. Like you go to one island, and you might be, you might be able to spend months diving and still not see every reef.
Yeah.
Like I was just at Escudo de Veraguas. The island's only 2 miles long. I spent 5 weeks there and dove in different places as much as I could, and I kept finding more and more really cool places to dive. And then I
Wow.
started exploring the interior of the island, and there's some interior waterways that were just mind blowing. There's so much to see.
Yeah.
Um, I've spent a total of over a year in Panama now, and I still haven't seen the San Blas Islands. I still haven't seen a lot of places. I still haven't met all the people. I'll never meet all the people. I'll never see every reef. I'll never see every corner of every island. So that's kind of one of the lessons I'm learning. When there's adventure all around you and places to explore that are right next to you, you don't have to sail around the world to get it. A lot of sailors think I'm going to sail around the world. That's my big
Yeah.
goal.
Yep.
But you're not going to see very much on the way. You're going to see a couple little spots, and then you're going to spend a whole lot of time out on the open ocean. And if that's what you want to do, that's great. By all means, do it. But if you're
Yeah.
just trying to explore places and have fun, like me, I want to go surfing, and I want to go spearfishing, and I want to write books, and I want to meet interesting people. I don't have to go anywhere for that. I've got it all right here.
Yeah, I think
You
that's
know?
great. I think that's how I feel like I would approach it. It does seem like there are a lot of people out there who have that goal of they want to circumnavigate.
Mhm.
I think, which is a great goal. I think but I'm with you. I see what you're saying about, not being able to really spend the time to really see places thoroughly. The last, I don't know, half a year, I've been reading a lot of the party books, Lynn and Larry parties.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think if I were going to do something like that, I would do it how they did it, which is, they really spent a lot of time. And I know they circumnavigated with two different boats that they built. I wouldn't feel now. I guess that all still depends. This is something else I wanted to get into with you about, the whole how you make a living living on a boat sort of thing. Because with what they did, it was writing articles, writing books. They would stop for maybe a winter, and Larry would work at a rigging shop, or that's how they funded their cruising kitty, so to speak. Nowadays, the more modern way is, like these YouTube sailing channels that are out there. There's a ton of them now. People that are funding their cruising kitty by doing videos or podcasts. They're able to fund their trip or their travels, their boat expenses with those things. For you, well, I'm trying to remember your story. How did that all come about? Just from, the first book you mentioned about becoming sober. So is that really kind of how you discovered this passion that you have for writing? And then the next book I think you said was a nonfiction book. And so that kind of just started, one thing led to another. And so now I'm assuming you must be able to fund yourself through your books. And then Patreon, maybe at this point, we should probably talk about Patreon, because I know you're on there too.
Yeah, well, you're right. I've always written a little bit throughout my life. And the first book I wrote was about how I quit drinking. And when that was selling, I decided that I was about to go on the sail. I was about to, buy my first sailboat and sail it around Florida. I thought, well, this is a, adventure I'll never repeat. I'll never be able to repeat my first time, so I better write a book about it.
Yeah.
And that book really sold well. It still does. So that's how that took off. And, and I write novels as well now. And I write short stories and I write poetry. I write something every day. And
that's good.
That turns a profit. And the sailing podcast absolutely exceeded my expectations. It provides me with gear, and since I'm in Patreon, my patrons provide me with some cash. That's how I'm doing it. Yeah. You got to be open-minded, and you got to change with the times, and you got to get out there and use every skill you can. And you got to really be a hustler I do anyway, it doesn't come naturally to me. I've got to like make sure I hustle every day to try to make a living out here. But I've also got a friend who is working right now here in Panama as a carpenter. He's building houses, and I've got another friend who is sailing and making a living doing work with marine electronics. He learned how to be a marine electrician on purpose. Like before he started sailing, he's like, I'm gonna be a sailor, and I'm gonna fund it by being a marine electrician. And he went out and he found a job as an apprentice years ago and learned the trade on purpose so he could be a sailor. And now he's doing it, and he's down here, and he's the marine electrician. It's not a whole lot of competition in the field. So there's people doing it different ways. Of course, there's lots of YouTubers. Some of them are making money, some of them aren't. Like, that's tough. You got to have you got to really be good. You got to be able to make a TV show quality video every week to make a money to pull it off. And any of these things like podcasting too, it's going to take years. It's going to take a number of years before you make money at it. You just got to keep at it.
How did you get into with the podcasting too? What gave you the idea to start doing that?
It was David Howes on the Ocean Sailing podcast. One day he said, if anybody wants to be a guest host, interview someone and send me the recording, and I'll put you on as a guest host. I'll air your episode. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm going to try that. I thought I'm going to the Bahamas. I'm going to buy a little Zoom recorder for $200, and I'm going to try to interview somebody just to see if I can do it. And I did. I found a couple that sailed around the world. They'd spent 11 years sailing around the world on a steel Colvin Gazelle that was junk rigged. The man was missing a leg.
Wow.
Yeah, so I interviewed them, and I also interviewed, as a guest podcaster, I interviewed Pete Goss. Well, he ended up as my first episode, but I interviewed a couple of people for David Howes as a guest interviewer, and then I just, somebody said, Paul, what are you doing? You should have your own podcast. And I thought, I'll let David Howes is, I'm just a guest. And then, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized they were right. Like, I should have my own podcast. So why not give it a try?
Yeah.
And I enjoy it.
Yeah. You're really good at it. I have to say, not only just with the questions that you ask, I know you've been doing it for some time. I think you have 160 plus episodes for the sailing podcast, and the new podcast. I don't know how many episodes are there, but it seems like you're real natural at it. You kind of got a little bit of the Howard Stern voice going.
Thanks.
I mean, you sound very professional. Like, you are professional. I don't know. I really like it a lot, and I'm really glad that I came across it. Yeah.
Thanks. It's a skill I had to develop from scratch. I think I prepped for it for 4 years. I was a college radio DJ.
Oh, really?
I had a reggae
Oh,
show once every other Sunday, and the first time I went on the air, I like everybody does, you lose the ability to speak at all. You switch the
you draw a
microphone on,
blank.
and yeah, you switch the microphone on, and all you have to say is your little one line, and your mind just blanks. It's amazing. I've seen it happen to me. I've seen it happen to other people.
Yeah,
I heard an interview with Larry King. He said it happened to him his first time on the air.
yeah.
It's amazing. But
Well,
but that's kind of how I cut my teeth, and then got used to speaking on a microphone, and then and even though in the beginning of my podcast I was nervous as hell,
yeah.
but you just keep doing it, like anything, and you get more comfortable and put your head into it, and
Well, I
try
was
to
nervous
get
to
better.
interview you. I did. I was not because I was. It's just more because I'm a total neophyte at this, but you're the real deal, and it's just like, oh, I'm just this little person in Iowa sailing on our boat in an inland lake, but I want to learn, and the way that I learn, like I said, is through people like you who are out there doing it. Not just with the sailing, but even with just doing something like this, and the writing too. I'm always looking for new authors. I'm always looking for ways to expand my writing skill set. And I just feel like so blessed that I was able to cross paths with you, because so many of the things that you do are things that interest me, that I'm passionate about too. I do want to also talk with you a little bit about, I love how you're so open about your issues with alcohol. As I told you in a recent email, I have a loved one who I would say is how they say they're what is that, a functioning alcoholic, or I'm not sure if that's
Yeah.
actually the term for it, but I worry a lot about this person. But they're older than me, let's put it that way. And I'm in my mid 50s now. And sometimes I wonder if it's just the thing where, they may think, well, I've been this way my whole life. What's the point? So for you, I know you think you were probably in your mid 40s, I think. Does that sound about right where you were?
Yeah.
And, when did you decide you just had enough? Like, I've got to change. This is not good for me. Like, how did that all come about?
For the last few years, I knew that I had to. For the last few years of the time that I was drinking and partying, I knew that it was out of control, and I knew that I was gaining weight. I was unable, no matter how much I exercised, I was unable to get rid of the beer belly, which was I found very offensive because I've always been athletic. And I could see the bags under my eyes, and my face looking puffy and unhealthy, and I wasn't making enough money. I wasn't able to show up for work. I was a self-employed carpenter, so I could show up to work whenever I wanted. But you're slacking if you're showing up to work at 10 a.m. as a carpenter. Like, you're really slacking.
Yeah.
Or missing work altogether because you're too hungover. So I knew I had to quit, but I was scared. I was scared to even try. But there were a couple of years when I knew that it had to happen eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just one night at a party. I saw a friend of mine who looked really healthy and clean cut and well dressed, and he had a smile on his face, and he was trim. And I offered him a beer, and he said, "No, I quit a year ago." And so I said, "Well, to talk to me about it. Tell me how and why you quit, because I'm curious." And he said, "Well, my brother just died. My brother died a year ago.
Man.
He was younger than me. His brother was 40. I was 44 at the time.
Wow.
His brother died a long, slow death that was dragged out over a number of years of internal organ failure from heavy drinking. And I don't know why that it hit me, but it did. That I could be either Jim or I could be Jim's brother. And I wanted to be Jim. I wanted to be healthy and happy and clean cut and at a party without a beer and a smile on my face and just looking good and looking healthy and without a beer belly. And it started right then. It started the next day. I had 2 beers left in the fridge and I drank them. But the following day was day one, and that was February 3rd, 2015. It was day one, and I haven't had a drink since.
It's funny because I just was talking to another sailor, and we got talking about alcohol, and I have alcoholism on both sides of my family. And when I was in my early 30s, I remember having a day kind of similar like to what you're talking about with that party and Jim. Came home from work, went straight to the fridge, and just like it was automatic, just grabbed a beer, popped it open, started drinking. And then I had this, all of a sudden became completely cognizant of the fact that, why am I having a beer every day I get home from work? And then I started worrying, is this my genes? I have alcoholism on this side, I have alcoholism on that side. And for me, that's what I just was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. And I also am kind of prone to, I have a lot of arrhythmia issues. And I found that alcohol really triggers that. So
yeah, weakens
for
your
me,
heart.
yeah, I just was like, this stuff makes me feel, I might feel okay when I first have, like in the first half hour, right? Like you relax and all that, whatever. But if you just keep going on and on and on, it's like the next day, it's like, I feel crappy. And I remember feeling like that in college even too. I was like, why am I doing this? This isn't really, this is whatever.
No,
Everybody
the
else
math
is doing
doesn't. The math doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you add up how good you feel and how bad you feel later, and the number of
Yeah.
hours and everything, the math is does not come out in favor of drinking.
Well, but with the cruising lifestyle, like this is what this guy was telling me. He's like, it's everywhere. Alcohol is everywhere. Like you have to have alcohol on your boat because people come over, and if you don't have alcohol, it's like he kind of made it sound like you can't not drink.
Nah, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. I don't have alcohol on my boat. My friend Alan doesn't drink. There's no alcohol in his boat. When you're in faraway places, you're very rarely going to run into problem drinkers because they can't get here.
Yeah.
They can't sail from there to here. If you're at the marina in Florida, yeah, they're all drunks because they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Sailing to them is hanging out on their boat, drinking liquor with their friends.
Yeah.
Maybe taking it out, for a day sail, or maybe crossing the Gulf Stream and making it to the Bahamas. But the further away you get, the less people like that you run into. And when you're in a place like here in Panama, you're very rarely going to run into problem drinkers. And anyone who comes over to your boat is nobody who comes over to my boat is ever surprised that I don't have alcohol in it. It's not a problem. It's not a problem at all.
That's how my boat would be. I'm not going to have it either because I don't know.
You can't. I mean, as a single hander, you simply can't drink and sail at the same time. It's completely impossible. And maybe if you have, I mean, a lot of boats are just two people, husband and wife.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you're sailing from the Bahamas to Panama. It's 7 or 8 days. You're alternating shifts. You go down and you sleep for 3 hours, and you come up and you're on for 3 hours. When are you drinking? Never.
Right.
You can't.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work. It simply wouldn't work. So that's the reality. That's the reality of it. If people who say that drinking and sailing go together are people that don't sail very far away.
Yeah. I do have to say, even sailing inland lake sailing and growing up in the 70s and 80s when I did sailing, I remember being down in the cabin of our sailboat and mixing gin and tonics for the adults. And
yeah, lake sailing.
That was the culture. People,
for sure. You can day sail
did that.
And get drunk and come back to the dock and dock your boat drunk, and you can pull that off. People do that all the time.
Sounds scary.
But you're not going on multi-day passages doing that.
Yeah. I don't know.
No doubt about it.
I just thought when you said that, I was really kind of shocked because, I read a book, another sailor, her name is Julie Bradley, and one of her books was Crossing Pirate Waters. Yeah. And then the first one, I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, she talks about that, how every day they'd have sundowner time, and every day there was, drinking. And so she eventually, I know, decided that enough was enough, and she wasn't going to do it anymore either. And it was hard. I remember her saying, because it's so part of the culture of cruising, the cruising lifestyle. And so, but she did. She got rid of it.
It's part of culture everywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
You
You're
can
right.
you can say the same thing about living in a house in anywhere in America.
Yeah.
You can do it or you cannot do it. If you're going to blame it on culture, then you're just blaming it on something other than yourself. It's up to all of us to make that decision.
Yeah.
Um, you can always blame it on, oh, yeah, everybody does it. Well, sure. We know when I was in a reggae band, everybody smoked pot.
Yeah.
But does that
Yeah.
mean I have to smoke pot? No. Like it's just
Yeah.
when your world is surrounded by people that are doing whatever they're doing, you think everybody does it,
Yeah.
but you don't have to. And then once you don't do it, all of a sudden your world is surrounded by people who don't, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's not part of the culture anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
drinking is not part of my culture. It's never a problem. I never, it's never an issue.
Well, I love hearing that because, like I said, I was pretty shocked. I have to say. I thought, well, I wouldn't fit in then. I just because I don't. I mean, I don't care if other people do it, but I just
If you
don't
want
want
to,
to do it myself.
yeah,
That's
if you
all.
if you want if you want to be social and you don't drink and you're around other boats that are having sundowners, just go in the middle of the day or in the morning and be social.
Yeah.
You know, it's if they're
Yeah.
gonna, it's no issue. That's the bottom line. It's no issue at all. Um, and they're the ones who are going out to bars and their boats are getting robbed while they're at the bar, and
Yeah.
I'm not. So it causes problems too. Driving a dinghy at night is incredibly dangerous around here. Lots of boats zipping around with no lights. People get killed all the time. Not all the time, but it happens on regularly enough. So you really avoid a lot of problems. Like Bocas Town. In the daytime, in the morning, safe. It looks a little edgy, but it's safe. You can walk around and it's no problem. As soon as it gets dark, it's a different place. Much more dangerous. Um, it's altogether an easier, better life without that. Without
Yeah.
drinking alcohol
Well,
and
speaking of
and no sort of problem.
Yeah, no, I just like I said, I was curious what your thoughts were on that after I had that other conversation because I know you talk very openly and honestly about your sobriety, which it really is I find inspiring because I mean, like I said, my experience that day coming home from work, I felt like I recognized that I could very well have an issue if I kept doing
Hmm.
what I was doing.
Yeah, it'll
Um,
sneak up on you.
yeah, that's exactly how I felt. But yeah, I
Hmm.
don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. I have to say, I really don't. And it's great to not feel like crap, right?
Oh yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine having a hangover and being on a moving sailboat.
Yeah.
That's got
Well,
to be hell.
how do you feel about speaking of feeling well? I think there was a podcast I heard you talk about. You were having this situation where you would stand up and you would feel dizzy and I
Hmm.
actually struggle with some vertigo issues myself. And, you know, being in remote areas and sailing solo and all these things, and then growing older, how do you feel about, these issues and how does this impact your lifestyle? In other words, do you feel like as you're getting older, man, I don't know if I could do this for the rest of my life, or if something happened, where you needed medical care, does that make you nervous if you're out in the middle of a 10-day passage and it's day 5? How do you get your mind around those sorts of things? Because there's these things that are kind of out of our control. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, two things. One is I try to live as healthy as possible. Obviously, no smoking, no drinking, no drugs. Two, a healthy diet. Three, yoga every day. That prevents
Mm-hmm.
injury and keeps the body healthy. That's how I got past the vertigo. I took yoga. I started going to hot yoga every day until it went
Yeah.
away. I don't know if it cured it or if it just went away on its own, but that's what I did. I don't know what that was all about. That was a week or two spell of vertigo. When I was on land, it wasn't when I was sailing. And then the bottom line is, if you're doing everything you can to be healthy, and you're still, obviously you're still getting older, and one day you're going to die, and you could get injured at any point or get sick.
Right.
The last 4 years of my life have been so good and so full of adventure that if I die right now, I'll still be ahead. Add up all the adventure I've had, and in the last 4 years. Add all that up, that's way more than most people experience in their entire life.
Yeah.
So if I die tomorrow while freediving or surfing or get hit by a comet, or hit in the head by a meteor or whatever, so it's all right. That's I'll take that risk. I'll take it because this is just so good, and life is so incredibly fun this way and so fulfilling that I'm fine with whatever risks come with it. We risk our lives every time you get in a car. Uh, every time I go surfing, every time I go freediving, every time I sail offshore, every time I get in my dinghy and drive around, I'm risking my life all the time. I do my best to minimize the risks. When I'm very serious about safety protocols while I sail. I don't like driving my dinghy at night. My dinghy is painted bright red. I've got lights. If I have to go out at night, I do what I can to be safe. But I'm still gonna. I'm 53. I'm still gonna surf waves that are outside my comfort zone. I'm still gonna go spearfishing and freediving alone, which you're not supposed to do, because I want to. I'll take a person with me. Don't get me wrong. I'll take a buddy whenever I can. But if there's no one around, I'm still going. I'm still gonna do it. You just got to get okay with it. Once you're okay with that, then you don't worry about it anymore. You've got to kind of find a place where you're okay with everything. You're okay with whatever risks you're taking. You got to be okay with dying. If you're not okay with dying,
And don't do it, right?
What are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to stay home? Never get in your
you
car?
Can die there too. Right?
I mean, yeah. So I've come to terms with all that, because when you're out on your boat alone in the middle of the ocean, you sometimes you think I could just die, and then you don't want to be worried about it all the time. So you have to come to terms with it. Okay, well, what's the worst case scenario? Well, I'm dead. Well, how bad is that really? We don't know. It's just the unknown.
Right.
Am I scared of the unknown? No, because that's what we're doing out here. Every time I go underwater, it's the unknown. Every time I sail somewhere, it's the unknown. So you just got to come to terms with it. You got to think about it and come to terms with it, and then move on and live your life the way you want to live it.
Well, control the things that you can control too. Like I think you've mentioned using jack lines and safety harness when you're on the boat.
All the time.
And those sorts of things, like doing the things, like I said, that you can be in control of. But there are things that we can't control, and we shouldn't necessarily, I think, allow those things to prevent us from doing what we're called to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to be mindful and respectful of your time, Paul. But I do just want to say, is there anything that you would want to bring up or tell our listeners?
Gosh, we've covered a lot. I would of course encourage everybody to go to my website, paultrammell.com, and have a look at both of my podcasts and all the books I've written. You can read the first 4 chapters of my latest novel on my website at paultrammell.com/Until They Bury Me. It's the title of my latest novel. And then I would also encourage everybody to step outside of their comfort zone on a regular basis. Do cool stuff. Live out your dreams. Chase your dreams. Come up with dreams. Spend time coming up with dreams, and then get out there and chase them, because normal everyday run-of-the-mill life is kind of dull. And there's so much out there that's just incredible. And life is so much better if you can get out there and experience something incredible. And you just got to step outside your comfort zone in order to do it.
I will, for one, will let you know that you have inspired me tremendously. And I am so grateful, again, to have come across you and your social media sites. I'm not on Instagram anymore, or not on Facebook too much either. But I have explored your website and definitely checked out both of your podcasts and listen regularly to both. And as you know, recently became a Patreon member. So
excellent. Thank you so much.
So I'm really stoked to be along for your journey. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. And I'm just, like I said, so very grateful for your time and for you sharing your story with us.
Thanks. Like I said, it's a pleasure. I love talking about all that kind of stuff. I love talking about myself.
Well, I love learning
Don't we
about
all?
The wonderful things that you've done. And I'll be sure to include, links to all of your socials and and like I said, your books on Amazon too. You have a lot of books out there. I do want to ask you one quick thing though. Which book is your favorite that you wrote? Do you have one out of the ones you've written?
Gosh, yeah, Journey to the Ragged Islands comes to mind as my favorite nonfiction because that was such an incredible journey. There's at least 3 near-death experiences in that book, and talking about stepping outside your comfort zone, that was a daily occurrence there. Then, my favorite novel is Until They Bury Me by a long shot. My latest novels, by far my favorite.
Sweet. All right. Well, you're the best. Thank you so much. I'm so, like I said, thankful and grateful. I really am.
Oh, thank you, Shell. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be on your show.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paul. You take good care and I'll be in touch.
Okay. You too.
Thank you so much for listening to my episode with Paul Trammell. I hope you enjoyed today's show. To learn more about Paul's adventures and work, please visit him on his website at paultrammell.com. You can also find Paul on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and patreon.com. Please see the video description and show notes for links. Until next time, fair winds.